Hello there. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. I'm Kirk Anderson, joined as always by Josh Bowe. It's about 10 minutes before 9. We are a little late tonight because I couldn't figure out why my audio wasn't working. You're joining us. It is Tuesday, July 16th at about 8:50 p.m. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing good, and Kirk is being nice. That's not the true reason we were late.
That's one of many reasons. Like, we were just talking. We've not talked in a week.
I know. It was good to catch up, but I also was preventing a personal bathroom emergency. So,
last week my kid wandered in on the show. This is life. This is life. So we're here, and about an hour ago, we had a couple of things we were going to talk about. Now we have one more thing that we can add to, which is always happens kind of with the relation to the show. So breaking news from Tim McMahon, then Sham Sharani. I don't know which one had it first, but Kyrie Irving is getting surgery to repair a broken left hand, which no idea what that means. No idea what, happened. Kyrie has some tweets where he low-key implies that he thinks he broke his hand because God was telling him he needed a break. Don't really that the things happen. Some light Googling in one of my group chats. Someone informed the group that a hand surgery is sometimes required because it stabilizes the hand and allows for quicker recovery. Broken hand, lots of bones in your hand. So not really sure what that means, where, when, or why. Probably doesn't matter. The sunny side up way of looking at this is that Kyrie Irving is getting his weird ass injury out of the way in the off season. That's my
good point.
That's my take. Like the Kyrie Irving super fans out there will tell you Kyrie Irving is not injury prone. Jeff Stotts will tell you, Jeff Stotts of In Street Clothes, who has a historical database of all injuries, will tell you that Kyrie has so many weird injuries you don't really know where to start. So why not add broken hand to it? Look,
not much more to add. He'll be all right.
Yeah, well, Kyrie's
it's his left hand, so
it's the hand that does all the special things for the Mavericks this season. But I will say that with a guy who's his size, I'm always surprised he's not hurt more often in different ways with how physical he plays for a guy who is, 6'2", 6'3", 180 pounds, whatever he is. It's impressive.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, he should be. I would be shocked if he's not ready for training camp. He should be okay.
Then the other thing we were going to talk about was kind of the first two games of Mavericks Summer League. Now, I watched the first one. I was there. I was in Las Vegas.
So you saw the good one of the two.
Saw the good one. And then at about 7:30 Central Time last night, I start to get a flurry of messages from you, followed by a couple from Mavs analyst Bobby Caralla, just talking like jokes about, just seems like it might be one of the worst basketball games you've ever witnessed.
Even Bobby said that?
Bobby was just like, this is for he's like, this is for real basketball heads if you're watching this game. So the Mavericks go out in the first game against the Utah Jazz, and it was a loss, but it was a 1-point loss, and the Mavericks were really fun. At least the Mavericks that I saw were really fun because the Jazz were playing something like 5 first rounders.
Yeah, the Jazz, their summer league roster is stacked. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you're watching that, you go out there, and I'm sitting here, and I was sitting with Dalton Trigg, and I was just sitting there, watching Omax play, and I'm just like, I don't expect Omax to perform against Hendricks and some of the other Jazz guys. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Hendricks was a eighth or seventh or eighth pick overall last year.
Yeah.
He was the thirst of a lot of Mavs fans, including, I guess, he was my favorite player, I think, in the top 10 projected. He could be really good. I hope he's really good.
Yep. And one of the guys, the Mavericks signed him to some kind of contract. We didn't even cover him signing.
Brandon Williams?
No, Jazzian Gortman. Was a 6'2" guard who came off the bench and was pretty fun against the Jazz. The Mavs ended up leading at the half by 1. But then the Jazz kind of just flat out talented the Mavericks during the second half, or during the fourth quarter in particular. AJ Lawson had a really fun game. Mavericks first or late second round pick Melvin Ajinka showed a willingness to shoot the ball, is what I'll say, but he was not good. He scored 13 points in 24 minutes, 5 at 13 from the floor. I was sort of worried about his athleticism, but he's a big guy, which was kind of nice. Really, he's probably, my take right now is we're never going to hear from him ever again. After he's with the Mavericks Summer League. That's okay. Like, the Mavericks just going to own his rights and hope that he turns into something as he plays over in France. That's fine. Like, that's what late second round picks are for. But he was interesting. And then the Omax of it all, I don't expect Omax to do a ton. Okay? Like, Omax, if he ever cracks the Mavericks top 9, it'll be in minimal minutes, being an energy guy, playing hustle defense, and you hope he's able to connect on an open 3. Like, that's, with the way the Mavericks are built right now, I'm not too worried, at least from game 1 of Omax. Talk to me about what you saw in game 2.
Game 2 was one of the worst NBA related basketball games I've ever watched.
That good, huh?
Well, I mean, if you were watching for Memphis, I mean, they look like the Harlem Globetrotters for about 80% of the game. I mean, it was seriously just the Mavericks. It was just turnover. And then it wasn't just that the Grizzlies scored off all those turnovers. They had 36 points off turnovers, which is an obscene amount in any type of game. They were dunks and alley-oop. Like, it was like Maverick turnover, alley-oop, turnover, then alley-oop, turnover, alley-oop. It was wild. They were running up and down the floor like it really was like a Harlem Globetrotters game for the first 3 quarters. And then the fourth quarter was basically entirely garbage time, and the Mavericks still tried, and Memphis was just running out the clock, and they made it look a little bit more respectable. But I mean, they were up. I mean, the thing that I won't get over is there were 2.5 minutes left in the third quarter, and Memphis was up 80-46, and the Mavericks had 23 turnovers and 17 made field goals.
Not good.
Not good to have 5 more turnovers than made shots when you're almost entering the fourth quarter. I had a follower chime in that said that this Memphis team is also pretty stacked, and they are. They've got a lot of NBA contributors on their roster. Zach Edey didn't even play in this game, but they've got Gigi Jackson, who's pretty good, and Scottie Pippen Jr., who played really good for them down the stretch last season. So they've got like 2 NBA contributors in their starting lineup. They've got some young guys that are a little seasoned. And they showed it. And apparently, like in the Grizzlies' first Vegas game, they turned the Kings over like 31 times. So they do that. They're playing a ridiculously aggressive defense in Summer League. So yeah, the Mavs were bad, but Memphis is kind of so far doing that to everyone in Summer League. But still, like, I don't care about the Kings. I'm watching the Mavericks. All I could do is judge the game that I watched, because I'm not watching all these other Summer League games, and it was awful. I mean, it was just it was terrible to watch. No one could dribble, and I know that you know this, Kirk. You've watched a billion Summer League games. You've seen more Summer League games in person than the average NBA fan has seen on television.
Yep.
They're sloppy games. Like, they're a mess. You have to really love the game to want to watch it and get enjoyment out of it, because you're slapping together a bunch of rookies, journeymen, second year, third year guys, end of the roster, second round picks, G leaguers, guys trying to get a contract overseas. Like, you're slapping all these guys together in like a week of maybe like a week of practice. These guys, like, the draft happened like less than a month ago. Like, you're just throwing together a bunch of young guys, and it's not going to look pretty. There's not a lot of great guard play. Like, I mean, the Mavericks don't even really have a true point guard on
Brandon Williams roster. Brandon Williams can score.
Yeah, but he's not a passer, and none of these teams usually have great passers on it because just the nature of summer league, and it's just hectic and chaotic. But even with all that qualifier, this was like a new level of bad. It was just really, it was really hard to watch because it wasn't just that the Mavericks actually weren't missing a ton of shots. Like I think they still shot like, I think they finished the game shooting like 45% or something. So it wasn't just like this inept cold streak. It was they couldn't dribble. Like it was just, they literally were just giving the ball away almost every other possession. It was just really hard to watch. It was like watching a junior high team play against senior varsity. Like it was tough. And it was hard to take, like, it's hard to take anything away from summer league games, but even this one, it was just like, I didn't see any NBA contributors when I watched it, but that's also okay because the Mavericks are good, right? They're contenders. They're not going to expect a contributor from this group.
And that's sort of what I wanted to, as we close our discussion about summer league. And granted, they have a few more games, and maybe we will watch. I'm not even sure if I'm going to require an NASCAR site to do it. It's just there's
after
no
this game.
there.
I don't know. There's nothing there.
No, and there's a big contingent of online Mavericks fans that put Omax in the untouchable status just because of kind of size and what. If he were to develop certain basketball skills, I think the thought could be that he would be like a version of Dorian Finney-Smith, which a version of Dorian Finney-Smith is a pretty functional player.
And it also, how many years did it take Dorian to get to his functional level?
Many, at least 4, 3 if you're being realistic. And the Mavericks will probably be fine letting Omax develop for years and and this is just his second year. But I will say that I think if you're thinking about the Mavericks as a team, I keep coming back to what we've talked about for a couple of podcasts now, which is that the Mavericks have a number of players who are able to step up and fill in certain situations where they didn't necessarily have that in the past. This is a good comment in the chat, which I want to address because I think if there is a criticism of where the Mavericks are right now, this would be it. Whoopoo says, Mavericks and the unhinged obsession with only having 2 players that can dribble in their organization, meaning Kyrie and Luka, which that one's actually, I like that shot across the bow but finding a third string point guard,
every team needs that.
Tyus Jones is sitting on the market, and I don't understand why. Dennis Smith is apparently still an option for the Mavericks, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times, though, when it comes to like just development, maybe one of these guys will pop off. But right now, if you were to really go 8, 9 deep, you don't need Omax. And that's okay with me. Maybe you'll get a chance.
That means your front office did its job. That's right. They don't need Omax, right?
That's right. That's right. You don't need a Jinka. You don't need Omax. You hope for the best, and maybe they turn into something giving enough opportunity. But one of the interesting comments from people that I was discussing basketball with in summer league is that more and more there's sort of the burgeoning opinion that the G League is actually quite counter to helping guys develop, which I find fascinating because certain kinds of players simply cannot develop there because the game is so different. Like when you get these notifications that Jaden Hardy or Omax scores such and such points, grabs so many rebounds, the game is played at a wildly different pace than the NBA. So the stats are ultimately very different than what you're getting. So you're not put in NBA situations. Now that's hard to do. Okay. NBA situation, but that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a developmental league. But for guys who are younger, meaning guys who need really fun, who are still in need of fundamentals, it's like, say what you want about Omax. Omax is a very good on-ball defender. He has apparently he's worked on his three-point shot a lot, but he's still got a lot of basketball to learn, And I'm okay with everything right now, being able to look at the Mavericks as they are and say, you know what? If something develops from this team, great, meaning the Summer League roster. But if not, I'm okay not thinking about these players until it becomes time that I need to.
Yeah, they're fine. Like that's the job of the front office is to make summer league not feel important, which they have. They've got a top 6 or 7 that feels pretty locked in that doesn't include any of these players on the summer league roster, and that's the goal of building a team. Like you want these guys to be able to develop on their own time, and you don't need to feel like you need to rely on them. So yeah, it's fine, and we'll see. They got at least 2 more games to play. Let's see what Omax. He did get he wasn't good game 1. I still don't think he was great game 2, but he at least perked up toward the end of the game, made 2 3-pointers. Looked really he looks confident in everything he does, which is nice.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a good environment for him because he's never going to take these kind of shots in an NBA environment. Like he's going to be running the floor and spotting up in the corner. If he sees NBA time, he's not going to be running pick and rolls or isolating or doing all that stuff. So that also hurts. But yeah, so there's just not much to take away from it. But I'm curious, since you were there, are there any other, that's where everyone in the NBA is in the same place for almost a whole week. It's not just fans, it's media, it's GMs, players, so there's a lot of, I don't know, a lot of glad handing, a lot of talk happens at Summer League. And just curious, what was kind of the vibe from just hanging around a bunch of people involved with the league, and anything interesting from your time there this past weekend, or were you there more to recharge?
A little bit of both. I mean, I saw a lot of people, but as you and I talked beforehand, a lot of folks don't really want to talk business by this point in the
That's
cycle.
fair.
Like
That's fair.
there were some more fun, broader basketball conversations where we had some stuff about Luka where you run into the people that, and it's so funny. I seem to just drive people crazy when I bring up Luka's fitness or any of that sort of thing. Well, you go outside of the Mavs fan base, and there are even other media reporters who are just like full on willing to say Luka needs to do this, this, and this because he's just not there yet. And talked about that with heard from a number of different people about that. I mean, largely related to just his continued need to get in better and better and better shape, to which my response was very simply like, they just made the finals. You're not like, what are we doing here? And I'm sure that, which is what frankly fans were doing to me as I'm talking about this on the road to the finals. A lot of people did agree with the broad-based thought that Luka was essentially only really truly healthy for about 2 games of the playoffs. And that even maybe game 5 against the Minnesota Timberwolves was like the one game where we got like a truly healthy Luka. And I think that that's going to be something to watch for, where.
Yeah. How do they get him to the end of the season healthy? Because we're kind of running on a streak of where every end of every season he's got.
It's not breaking down. It's just he plays physical basketball.
Yeah,
it's the nature of it. Like I don't know when he hurt his knee. I don't know when he hurt his knee. I think he hurt his knee selling a foul against Russell Westbrook, and he slammed his knee so hard into the ground. Now I don't know that his knee was maybe hurt before that, and it only made things worse. And that might really truly be the case because he might have been hurt towards the end of the regular season. Like it wasn't just the playoffs thing. Like Luka plays, he played a lot of basketball this year, just a ton of basketball this year. So I think there's still sort of the Mavericks. I don't really like to be the fan base that is like, nobody believes in the Mavericks, but I still think there's a whole heck of a lot of like, how does this keep happening? Like just general disbelief that the Mavericks got there based off of other people's mistakes instead of how the Mavericks played basketball.
And to be fair, like you're absolutely right, but there's also a sense of you almost can't blame the people that aren't watching them every day because they can't watch every day. Not everyone can watch every single game. And the Mavericks don't do themselves any favors because every season in like January or February, they're like at 500 or 2 games above 500 or below 500. And then after the All-Star break, they win they basically win every game. Like you've talked about their record pre-February and post-February over the last like 4 years. And it's like, they're like a middling team pre-February. And then post-February, they're like a 70-win team. Like they're a juggernaut. And then by then people's perceptions have already been kind of honed in because it's already been 40 games. And it's hard to change people's minds after 40 games, So
Yeah.
If they could start a season, like if they can get to Christmas playing like they played in March and after the All-Star break, that will change a lot of people's minds. I think the perception nationally about Luka and about the team as a whole.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and I will say the general thought about Klay Thompson is a great deal of concern. Skepticism, which fine. That's sort of my thought. Fine. Like, let's be skeptical about the Mavericks. I don't care. You know, I didn't really try to convince anyone because it's one of these things where we have watched I've not run the numbers, but the last time I looked at this, when Luka Doncic plays basketball, the Mavericks win like 65% of the time. You know, and before Kyrie got here, they didn't win much when Luka was out. So I'm very bullish on the Mavericks team, very bullish on Luka's next season. And that's just sort of where I end things. And I'm trying to think if there's like anything else interesting of note. Maybe a little bit.
Any fun interactions? Did you run into anyone? Did you run into Mark Cuban in the tunnel? Like that one time?
No, but I was really only there for one game day. I did not make it over to the practices. It was like Dwayne and Dalton. And I just wasn't in the place to really go do work. That's my fault, but
fair. That's fair.
Kind of exhausted, and there wasn't anybody I really wanted to talk to. Dallas basketball, Dalton did a lot of work while he was out there. First time he had been, so I think he had a great time. But
good for him.
And he and I, I talked to him last night, and I said, "Now do you see?" Because he was kind of worried about the credentialing process because the NBA is annoying about this. I told him before, and I was like, "Look, man, if you don't get credentialed, it's not going to matter." And the only thing that would matter is like whether you can actually get up and close to the players in certain respects, which is really hard to do anyways, even with credentials. And he agreed with me where it's just like, he could go there next year and just have take your computer, find someone who knows the internet password for the arena, which isn't that hard, and write up your stories and do stuff there. Cause like, there's just like one gym is a small high school gym. It doesn't seat that many people. The thing that amazed me that I will say, and excuse me, I have like a really bad cough. The thing that amazed me is how many people went to this thing, despite there really not being anyone there to see.
I was going to ask because were you there in 2023?
I was there for Wemby's debut.
Wemby, yeah,
and there were that many people for Bronny James. Who?
Oh my god!
It was insane, man. I mean, the rookies who I saw that looked good. The Houston Rockets got a great one, and we should be pissed off,
dude. That Reed Shepherd, they keep picking. I feel like they keep picking our favorite draft. Like we're not the biggest draft heads, but the ones that we fall in love with, the Rockets keep picking them.
Yeah. I mean the Matthias, whatever his name is, played for the Bulls, is a bad man. I mean, I don't think there's like a real star in this draft, but that was known beforehand. Yeah. But a lot of the top picks looked interesting in specific ways. Like Sarr was very good on defense. The Hawks guy had a little more bounce than his athletic testing would have recommended.
Yeah,
so that was really there.
Well. Yeah, that's crazy that you said in terms of like crowds that it was similar to the Wemby Scoot summer.
Part of that's the Lakers of it all, though.
Really?
Like if he wasn't on the Lakers, I don't think there would because all the Lakers games fill up. That's just sort of a
because Vegas. There's so many LA transplants in Vegas, and it's not even that far. It's not you can drive there if you're a fan.
It's always interesting to see who plays like when maybe they shouldn't be playing. Like Brandon Miller played for the Hornets team for a game or two, and it's like that dude he had a great rookie season after a rough start. So yeah, my overall good time. I mean, next year's going to be incredible because the draft is going to be pretty amazing. But it's always a fun time. I recommend it. Ran into one of our listeners, Glenn. Sat with him in the crowd for a little while. Talked a little basketball. It was fun.
That's fun. Good for you. I know that's kind of where you go to recharge your chi every year.
You'd think so, but I can't sleep in that city for shit.
I can't sleep in hotel beds. I can't. I just can't.
So that's why I kind of look and sound like this. But all right, we'll take a quick break here. Thank you so much for listening to our show. If you're watching on the live stream, Josh and I are going live most Tuesday nights to do a quick show. We'll try to figure out what we're going to talk about because we're almost near the closest thing to a dead season in the NBA calendar. I haven't done a live show where fans come up and join, but maybe I'll do one of those this week or next week. Who knows? I will get something up on the counter. If you are interested in knowing when we're going live, there's notifications you can set up within the YouTube channel. I highly recommend doing that and would appreciate it if you do. If you're also watching the show a little bit later, please leave a comment. We're not going to pick up many subscribers this time of the year. We're at about 2,600, which I was fairly pleased with relative to my expectation of having no idea what we would do. If you're listening on the audio stream, thank you so much. Please leave a review. Please consider leaving us 5 stars as well. I'm going to insert some audio ads now, and then Josh and I will be right back. Those of you watching live on the video, you can just stare at our pretty faces for about 5 seconds. All right. So I didn't know what we were going to talk about today. And then Jake Kemp, formerly of The Ticket, who is a contributing writer to D Magazine on occasion, and one of the main hosts of, and please correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, Josh, the growing podcast, The Dumb Zone. Is that correct?
Yep, they're on Patreon. You can
and
subscribe
they have, since striking it independent, he and his team have really put the community to be envied together. I think they're having a great time over there. But Jake wrote an article. I'm going to post it in the comments here. It might be a little bit hard to find. I'll post it in the show notes for the audio only people, because going D Magazine is sometimes a bit of a weird thing to navigate. But the article is titled "On Mark Cuban and Quiet Exits." How would you describe this article? Because I really enjoyed this, because he tapped on something that you and I have skirted around, and then it gives us a reason to talk about this without us being the ones to launch the conversation.
Which sometimes helps, because I feel like when we launch, it's like shoot the messenger kind of thing.
Yep.
So it always helps that when we can latch on to when someone else starts it. But I thought it was, it's a conversation that I understand. Like the whole crux of the article is like the most, like maybe the most out there public facing owner in modern sports has basically quietly left, like given up his spot, and no one's talking about it, compared to how much Mark Cuban has been talked about for the last 20 years. It's just kind of, this is on the level of like if Jerry, not on the level, but like if Jerry Jones sold the Cowboys, if like, when the Steinbrenner situation with the Yankees, like Cuban had reached that kind of echelon of notoriety as a sports owner. And it's the whole point of the article is like, it's crazy that he's kind of gone. Like he's not gone, but he's ceded his position of power for the most part, and it's just kind of like business as usual. Like it just didn't seem to get the coverage that you would think it would, considering how prevalent Cuban has been in the public forever. Like seriously, since he bought the team in 2000. I was 11 years old. Like he's been a part of like the Mavericks since I knew who the Mavericks were for the most part. So it's just kind of crazy. And he kind of just goes off on that. And I think it's interesting. And I think what's interesting is kind of like, how did we get here? Cause I thought it was because me and you, and we talked about on the podcast, like when the team was sold, and we talked about like, what are they doing? Because he kept trying to say that he was going to retain power of basketball operations. And we're like, people don't pay billions of dollars for something to then not run it. Like, well, it was just very weird. I think that contributed to some of how the story was covered.
We got everybody to say that. Everyone. It was driving me nuts. The first one.
It was driving me nuts.
As a reporter, when a source like that tells you something, you have to report it. And really, I don't necessarily blame anyone for not having any skepticism, because if that source is telling you this, meaning the former owner of a team who you've had a relationship with for 20 years tells you a thing, it's not really the time to offer not like criticism, but skepticism of that, because you're breaking news. Okay. And Cuban did a great job at this. Now, I don't know if anybody's followed this, but the Celtics have put themselves up for sale as well. Primary owner, I think his name's like Wayne Grouse. I don't know. The primary owner of the Celtics but he also put out a statement about how he's going to sell the team, but he's still going to be the basically the person in charge, no matter who they sell the team to, which that's not how that works. But it's the framing that he put out into the universe. And sometimes the first thing is the only thing people read. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. I posted this video of some social media account in the Mavs Slack the other day, basically asking Mavericks fans during the playoffs where Luka went to college. And they got it was like 19 out of 20 people that could not say that he did not go to college and was drafted after playing overseas. Like, it was heinously embarrassing for people like us who just live, eat, and breathe Mavericks basketball. But what it was a reminder of just how many sports fans don't pay any attention to anything. Sometimes not even the game. In fact, usually the game. They care about very specific elements of things. Everybody watches sports differently.
Yeah.
Say all that to bring up to the fact that it has been several months since the sale of the Dallas Mavericks. And I think most people are not going to understand for years that Mark Cuban is no longer the primary owner.
Absolutely. You could probably pull, like, if you went to opening night in October later this year and you went to Victory Park in Dallas and you talked to 100 fans walking into the stadium to go to the game, ask them who's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, I guarantee you almost all of them would, like 70% would probably say Mark Cuban, maybe higher. So yeah, absolutely. And it just goes to show the impact that Cuban, how much he became kind of the face of the organization in a lot of ways outside of Dirk, because he was involved in everything. I mean, he was not just the owner. Like, he made basketball decisions. He did not, he was a main driver of their basketball strategy, which helped them win a title and also helped, some pretty bad stuff after 2011. So, obviously, mixed emotions there from a lot of fans who've been watching the team for a long time, but it was one of those things where I think we always wondered, like, I personally never saw him stepping away. He's always done interviews where he was like, the only people that will own the Mavericks besides me or my kids. Like, I think he said that, like, and it was years ago, but that was like the one of the few times he mentioned, not owning the team. He was like, oh, it'll be my kids. I mean, he lives, breathes the Mavericks. There's no denying his passion for this stuff. I just never thought, I thought it'd be a Jerry Jones thing. Like, he would just have it till he physically couldn't anymore. So it was shocking. And there was a part of me that had to process, like, oh, this is for real. But once it happened, once you're not the primary owner, that you can say all you want about retaining basketball control, but that's just not how things work with this much money being thrown around. But it was weird. I admit it was weird. So I understand why it might be like a weird transition for Mavs fans, kind of processing the fact that he's not the guy anymore.
So, you want to know something funny? I went to go look for this article again.
The one you wrote?
The title of the article is On Mark Cuban, and Quiet Exits. I'm reading the article. Scroll down to the bottom. Second comment is from Mark Cuban, and it is Mark Cuban. I have done the background. It is quite literally Mark Cuban. When you hire, he wrote this: when you hire someone, you help develop them, and if they get good at their jobs, as Nico and Finley are, you let them do their job. When they need help, you help them. If they weren't good at their jobs, you would hear from me much more. But fortunately, they aren't just good. They have been great at their jobs. Let's go, Mavs.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Just a chef's kiss. So it allows me now to say, we're going to, Josh and I have been very reluctant to speculate on why Cuban sold. When I was in Vegas, I was around some people who have indicated that there were other reasons that he sold. Nobody would tell me what, but I also didn't press because, frankly, I don't want to know.
You know too much.
No, but yeah, knowing information and not being able to share it sucks. So I would just rather not know. Anyway, I share that to then pivot to the fact that in June of 2021, I chose to write, and this was right after the Cato story. So before, it was right around the time Donnie Nelson was fired / stepped away / Rick Carlisle also stepped away. I wrote an article where I attempted to couch how much good Cuban has been for the Mavericks, to which how much Cuban had been part of the story of the Mavericks over the last 15 to 20 years, and my opinions on why that wasn't the best for what the Mavericks were trying to build. The first half of the article, I was very praiseworthy of Cuban. The second half of the article, I excoriated him. I don't think my article had anything to do with anything in terms of why Cuban stepped away, not my implication. But my criticism, the overarching criticism, was Mark Cuban is too much the story. And the last 3 years, there has been so much less Mark Cuban. So much less Mark Cuban. And I just think that matters. And when you go read the article that Jake wrote paired with this Cuban comment, he's almost I don't think he did this on purpose. And I don't want to misread quote, but it's like, so you're telling, so he said, when you hire someone, you help develop them. If they get good at their job, as Nico and Finn are, you let them do their job. So are you saying, meaning Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban, are you saying that Donnie Nelson and Haralabos Voulgaris and all the different people who came through the Mavericks for years and years and years and years couldn't do their jobs, weren't good at their jobs? Is that the implication? The charitable reading is, of course, Mark Cuban did not mean that. He would not say that. But it's there. And you can't ignore that, because how he behaved was, for several years, for almost a decade, was as though the team needed his constant input. So.
Yeah. I mean, all I could say is they needed a change, and that's for sure. And we know that this opinion is validated. Like, we're not talking our asses, because they made the change and now they're in the best position they've been in over 10 years. So, like, it was clear, and it wasn't just Donnie and Haralabob. It was more than that, because if you look and you read between the lines and you look at some other additions, they completely revamped their front office since they hired Nico. Like, it's not just Nico and Finley. Like, they hired
the cap guy
from Brooklyn that helped facilitate the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving moves. They hired Brooklyn's draft guy that drafted all those players that made Brooklyn so appealing before Kevin Durant and Kyrie joined, when they had that really fun Kenny Atkinson-led team with Dinwiddie and D'Angelo Russell and Jared Allen. Like, they hired that guy, by the way, is an assistant GM. They hired Dennis Lindsey, who's now working for the Pistons, who clearly had an impact because they hired an assistant coach that worked with Rudy Gobert. And you look at what Derek Lively did in his rookie year. They brought in Dante Exum, who was a Lindsey draft pick, and he was one of the Mavericks' most shrewd and successful offseason moves from last summer. And this is from an organization that, remember when they hired Garrison Rosas, he was their new GM and lasted
3 days.
3 days.
I was in Vegas.
And he left. So we went from an org that seemingly couldn't bring in fresh faces and new voices. And you look at Haralabob came in, and that, how, he lasted a couple of years, and there was strife and there was tension. And you look at how stagnant the org got in terms of its basketball thinking in the front office. It's a complete 180. It's almost a new team. I mean, it's a new organization. It's almost a completely new organization from top to bottom, from coaching staff to front office to now ownership. So all that stuff we were saying, we should feel a little validated that that's kind of paying off. They needed a new voice. They needed new voices. They didn't just need one new voice. And the results speak for themselves. Like the way that they do business in the last 3 summers, you cannot tell me it's not a night and day difference than how they were doing business the previous summers. Just the things that they're doing, the way that they're manipulating the cap, the way that they're targeting players, the players that they're targeting, how they're going about their offseason moves and their trade deadline acquisitions. Like, it's just different. It's just way different. You've been watching if you've been watching the Mavericks since before the 2011 title, you know it's different.
Well, here's another. This is a second great question from Woopo in the comments. He says, "Could it just be that Cuban is more interested in his pharma stuff over basketball?" So he might be, but here's my follow up to this. When Cuban entered the league, he was one of the richest owners. By the time he was exiting the league pre-sale, he was in the bottom 10. Coming up with cash on hand for Cuban was not the easiest thing to do. He had talked about how invested he was in different things. He might be worth X amount of dollars, but net worth is a number on a page. How much dollars you have in your bank account to pay luxury tax payments, to figure out salaries is a different deal. And the Mavericks went from being a team that I think were reasonably, it's not like they're broke or poor, but I
don't think they paid the tax from post 2011 to
one time.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And they paid a ton of luxury tax earlier, but that's when the payments weren't as steep and the amounts
before the 2011
salary cap was lower.
Yeah.
So it's just a different deal. And I think that, he sold it like over 10 times his initial purchasing price, because I think he purchased the team for 280 and I think he sold for 3.6 billion. I mean, yes. So it's a different situation. Jose in the chat says he admitted on the Knuckleheads podcast that the other owners got smarter and wealthier. And I do.
That's absolutely true.
Like, the wealthier thing is not his fault. Like, Steve Ballmer makes and loses more money in the day based off of Microsoft's stock price than any other owner in the league. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also like when Cuban entered the league, like it was dinosaurs. Like it was kind of like the Moneyball thinking. Like he was absolutely ahead of the curve.
I love addressing commenters just because I can't help myself. There's a strange KP fan in the comments he's been in the show like 3 times, and I'm just going to address it because it's middle of summer. Who cares? He says, Ivmaz says, will you at least acknowledge that the one season Luka played with Dirk, Luka had 4 times the amount of assists as Devin Harris, yet Luka and Harris had the exact same number of assists to Dirk Nowitzki. Dude, yes.
Does he know that Devin Harris and Dirk came off the bench together?
Yeah, came off the bench. Like what? Good for you being able to read shit on the internet. Stop being a child. Dirk played almost no games that season because he was getting ankle injections following a surgery. He can't walk to this day. He should not have played that year. Like, people that have their agendas that want to make Luka look bad, shut the fuck up. Anyway, I get comments from people that hate it when I get emails from people that are like, I hate it when you address the commenters. I'm like, no, this is a community, and I'm going to tell community members like this guy, who I am now blocking.
This is a community that you are not a part of anymore.
No, because if you're a Boston Celtics fan where you compare KP and Dirk, get out of my mentions. Go away. They are not even remotely in the same stratosphere. I like KP at this point. I'm really happy that he got his 1 ring, and now will probably, because of a frighteningly weird injury, may not play for several months. Like, God, did you see that? Like, he's not going to start the regular season.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, the Cuban thing of it all, I wouldn't be shocked if he sells the rest of his shares to Patrick Dumont at some point and just moves on. I had heard from someone that he was very interested in like MLS ownership, which he tried to buy the Cubs at one point. I think he tried to buy the Pittsburgh Pirates.
He tried to buy the Texas Rangers.
So
it went down to a court case or whatever.
Wow, I don't know that at all.
Oh yeah, it was between him and the current owners after Tom Hicks was putting the team up, and it went down like they were. I mean, he was this close to becoming owner of the Rangers, so it wasn't like a cursory thing. Like, it was a big. Like, I can't remember the exact details. I just remember it like went down to like some court case or something like that. I can't remember how it exactly worked out, but yeah. Here, and I know this guy has been shadow banned, but Dirk.
Oh, he played 42 games with Luca. They play, and so that's according to stat. That's just games. That doesn't talk minutes. They only played 40 games together in 2019, 2020.
Yeah, Devin Harris and Dirk played 448 minutes together, and Dirk and Luca played 335.
Yeah,
so about 100, a little over 100 minutes more.
That's why their assist totals are the same, sir. Also, I mean, they had a chemistry like Luca and
Devin and Dirk have been playing together for how many years?
Like on and off for, I mean, what 2003,
04. I think Harris was the 04 draft.
Yeah, he was 04 pick to 06, and then he came back and played later and played several seasons together. Like it's just such like easy stuff where it's like if you have an agenda to get off about a player, at least come with something interesting. Like and it's just that there was the guy he'd been doing this all a while where he's like, Dirk didn't pass to Luca. Or I'm sorry, Luca didn't pass to Dirk. It's like this is not true. Like Luca's rookie year was trying so much nonsense. Like he loved playing with Dirk. Go look at all the videos. Like they wanted him to play more, and that's why Dirk pushed through the pain.
Yeah, I think if they didn't draft Luca, Dirk would have retired.
Yes. Yeah. He was in not like because he did not, he only had the 2 surgeries, and he just didn't like rehab. He didn't like the way his body felt, I don't think. And he had that ankle cleaned up, and the cleaning up of the ankle made it worse.
Yeah. And he's never really had a lot of surgeries. So
no,
he's not had to do a ton of rehab in his career. And to try to do it at when you're 40 or whatever, like that's just not compared to all the others. In addition to all the other stuff you got to do to get ready to play a game at that age, it's a lot. It's physically grinding.
It is. Don Ramon says, I miss Dirk. Don, I miss Dirk too. I have really, earlier in the post Dirk era, I got a little annoyed at how they rolled him out as a kind of a mascot, but now every time I see him on TV, he looks so healthy. He looks like he looked great during his Hall of Fame speech. He just looks great. I think walking sucks for him, but you know what? Life comes for us all. Sucks for me too. Oh, we have anything else we should talk about?
I think we hit the 2 things you wanted to talk about before we got on, Cuban and Summer League, but yeah, I don't know. There's nothing really. I don't think there's anything else going on.
Yep. Ryan Parker is a great comment. He says Dirk had an interview with 105 The Fan after last season talking about how walking around Disney with his kids hurt, and looking back, he would not have done that last season.
Yeah. Like, did you see him walk like that NBA 75 ceremony when he was walking out?
I mean, a lot of those guys walked around like that, so it didn't exactly stand out until you think about it and you're like, oh no.
Right.
So, well, we'll figure out what we're going to talk about next. Sorry to block people, but I'm not that sorry to block people. Don't come in here with your nonsense. Matt Davis asks, talk about the Kyrie broken hand. Sir, we led the show with that. Don't you worry.
It'll be fine. He'll be back by training camp.
He'll be fine.
Unless I was trying to think like other broken hands, and I remember when Steph Curry broke his hand that season, and he missed like the whole season, but that was because they were tanking. Like he could have returned. It wasn't because
Kevin Love broke his hand doing push-ups. Oh, do you remember that?
I don't remember. Was that Minnesota Kevin Love or Cleveland Kevin Love?
I think it was Cleveland Kevin Love, but I could be misremembering.
Did LeBron send a snarky tweet about it?
Fit in or fit out?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have something to talk about. Olympic stuff starts soon. Oh, that's the last thing we can actually mention is that Dante Exum played a heck of a game again for Australia against Serbia the other day. Looked functional again, and I'm Josh Green did not. And I will ask you to go look at the box score if you don't believe us. Okay, guys, everybody have a great rest of your week. We'll talk soon if there's any more news, but it's probably going to be quiet. I'm sure Josh and I'll come back next Tuesday to talk basketball just because we want to and we like each other. Everybody have a great rest of your week. Go Mavs.